Hey everybody, welcome back to Deciding to Love. Thank you so much for listening to the show, for watching the show when that's applicable. And I want to ask for just a couple of things here before we get started, if you don't mind. It'd be a huge, huge help. First of all, if you haven't already subscribed, whether it's on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or even all three if you'd like, please do so. Secondly, if you don't mind, I'd love to hear from you. Whether you comment on an episode on YouTube or on Spotify, or you leave a review on Apple Podcasts, and I think Spotify allows for reviews as well now, please do that. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to hear your suggestions. We'd just love to hear from you. And if possible, try to keep it positive, if you will. I'm getting ready to share today's interview with Mark and Sarah. And I just want to take this opportunity to encourage you, if you're interested in being on Deciding to Love as a couple, if you've been in a long-term romantic relationship of 10 years or more, you don't have to be married, just a long-term committed romantic relationship of 10 years or more, you're still excited about each other, you're still excited about the relationship, and you'd be willing to share what you've done to create that dynamic in your relationship, I would love to have you on the show. So please go to decidingtolove.com and you click on share your story. You can apply to be on the show and I'll be in touch with you soon. All right, without further ado, here's today's conversation with Mark and Sarah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to Deciding to Love. I am your host, Nathan Holritz. It is a privilege to be here with you all today. And it's a privilege to have Mark and Sarah on the show today. Thank you guys for being willing to do this, especially amidst a busy schedule. I really appreciate it.
Oh, so excited. I saw your ask for this and I thought, how fun would that be? So I'm usually on your side of the thing where I'm the one asking the questions and doing the interviews. So it's nice to be on this side and kind of experience it in a different way.
Well, and just based on what you all sent me, I'm pretty stoked to get into this conversation. There's a lot to cover. But as this is a relationship podcast, I'd love to just start with kind of the backstory. How did you guys connect in the first place?
You want to start or you want me to start?
Yeah, I think, I can start. We actually met at our church's camp, and we were both counselors, and we worked there for 5 years. And that's where I met. That's where I first, we didn't like date immediately as soon as we started working there, but I remember that first time seeing Sarah. In fact, I think I remember exactly where it was. And, it was almost like a love at first sight thing, just like a natural attraction. And, I said, I think I may want to ask her out or something. So, yeah.
That's cool.
And from there.
Isn't that neat how those memories sometimes they just stick? Like it's been, because you guys have been in some kind of relationship. I mean, married for close to 30 years and have been in a relationship for over 30 years at this point, right?
Yeah, I mean, we started dating. I was 15, he was 18, FYI. But yeah, I mean, it was like the summer of 95.
Wow.
Yeah. We were working at camp. Yeah.
Well, okay. So take me back then to that moment. I mean, Mark, you said that first impression when you saw Sarah, not only the visual component, of course, of the attraction to the other person, but there's also the personality component of it as well. I'm curious to hear from both of you. If you were to pick one thing, what was one thing that really drew you to the other person?
Yeah, I mean, and it goes till today. I mean, I'm still attracted to her beauty, and yeah, I mean, that's just like I said. I mean, it's a natural attraction, and you almost know there's just that spark that is ignited when you first see her. So
yeah.
Well, I was trying to think, like you saw.
And by the way, I have to, sorry, Sarah, to interrupt you, but I have to say that's really cool. 30 years into a relationship to still have to be opposite of somebody who's like, man, you're beautiful. That's really, really cool.
Yeah.
After all this time. Sarah, but what about you, please?
Well, I was just thinking, like, when I first remember him was because we both lifeguarded too. We lifeguarded and were camp counselors, but I remember him, one of our first conversations, even before he had asked me out, and he was like, I don't know if I'm cut out working with kids or not. I like working in the pool and playing the piano and doing all the other things. I don't know. And I remember having conversations, they're just kids, because I've always, I still teach today, so I'm always around kids. So it's just very natural for me. So I remember having that conversation, just trying to encourage him. And I was like, yeah, he's got some cool attributes and things going on about himself. And I thought obviously he was good looking. He was doing canoe rides every day, so he was getting pretty buff, like
Nice.
kids on rides. And I was like, oh, okay. And he was out there running every day, working out until so it was just some natural physical attraction there. And I was
Sure.
like, he's super talented on the piano, and it was just kind of cool. I don't know, a coming together of both of our talents, and not just that, but just like we are attracted to each other in lots of ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know I keep coming back to this, but one of the things that I really want to explore on not just particularly our conversation or during our conversation today, but in this show in general, looks like we sounds like we got a dog in the background.
Sorry, that's our dog Bella, and she normally is quiet, and of course today. Sorry.
No worries. But I just think there's something to be said. Obviously, it's only a piece, maybe even in some cases a small piece of the puzzle, but especially in the context of a long-term relationship, when we can still look at the other person and say, man, I'm just really like, I just am attracted to you. I
Yeah.
remember my grandfather, who I featured in the first couple episodes of of Deciding to Love. He and my grandmother were together for over 66 years.
Right.
And even really to the very end, before she passed away, he was still so affectionate with her and so romantic with her and consistent in telling her how he was attracted to her, how beautiful she was.
Aw.
And I thought I mean, he was intentional, it seemed, in that. But I think there was just a natural sense as well that almost like he couldn't help himself in telling her that. I think that was the really, really, really cool thing, because a lot of times in long-term relationships, that seems to kind of fall off.
Yeah, I think it's not forgetting where you started, and it's easy to in the midst of life, kids, jobs, the stressors of money, and all of those things. But I think trying to remember where you started and keeping it fresh, which
Yeah.
your grandfather did an amazing job at.
Well, I want to go to it. And for those of you, especially those of you that are listening, this is your first time listening to Deciding to Love. What I do in advance of the conversation or interview is I send the guests that are coming on the show, the couples that are coming on the show, some questions. And one of those questions is, what are the big 2 or 3 ideas, principles that have ultimately enabled you to have not just a long-term romantic relationship, but one that you actually still want to be in, that you still enjoy, that you have fun in, right? And that's, I mean, that's really what this whole show is about, is highlighting those couples who've been able to create something like that. So the first thing that you said, I'm going to read this verbatim, is, I believe our relationship with God keeps us grounded and a point that helps anchor all decisions. And so I want to get into this a little bit, because I think this is a very fascinating concept, not only certainly from a religious standpoint, but even for those who are not religious.
Mm.
I want to kind of get into the psychology of this as well. So describe, first of all, what this looks like on a day-to-day basis, like practically in your day-to-day life. How has this helped you build a really great relationship?
I don't I'll start and then you can just jump in. We were talking about it last night, and I'm like, practically, it starts with us individually. And that can be whether you are someone who is religious and knows God, or that's just not your thing. But for us, it's taking care of each other individually. Like, I draw that circle around myself every day. How
Mm,
can I be better? How can I take care of my issues so that I can better serve Mark and my kids? Otherwise, it becomes selfish and like, I need this. And we do have needs. That's the human condition. However, you can flip it by not being so focused on yourself, like by taking care of yourself first, like, self-care in the morning and making sure that you're exercising. That's really important to us. And, I go to the gym every day and work out, trying to make sure I got my mental game on. And, for us, getting, a devotional or reading through, scripture and just remembering where we started. But those are the kind of things that for us, that it's a day-to-day thing that helps ground us. And so we have a commonality when we are talking with each other. Well, things are hard, for everyone, finances, different things, that dynamics that happen, but that becomes our center, that we're always able to come back to that.
yeah. Mark, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, sure. And I think it boils down to, really who you believe God is, your relationship with God, and and that really helps you determine your values and essentially and ultimately what's right and wrong, because that helps drive a lot of your, you know, essentially your behaviors in marriage
Mm.
and things you come across. Yeah, but we, and like Sarah said, things we go through. Yeah, I mean, we pray over those. Even we've got a little sign in our house that says marriage takes three. And I think that's essential and part of our marriage is that God's in the center of everything, and
Yeah.
we look to Him for
Yeah.
for answers and to help guide us and direct us.
So you've kind of pointed out a couple of different things here that I want to highlight. First of all, to go back to what you were saying, Sarah, about the significance of taking care of yourself. I was just doing another interview yesterday with a couple, and we were talking about the importance of development, self-development ultimately,
Mhm.
where we're not only taking ownership for our own behavior, but also in addition to that, striving to continue to improve as an individual, right? So there's a certain baseline that we're bringing to the picture. It kind of sounds like that's what you were describing. But then
Yeah.
there's also, in addition to that, ideally a continued striving at some level to improve ourselves over time, that we're not just static. And
Yeah.
that carries a lot of significance in the context of a relationship. But to bring it back around to this point that you both have made, the significance of having, in this case, your belief system in God, which obviously, to put it super simply, is something that's way, way bigger than both of you. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
what I find really fascinating about this, in part, is that this concept I think is applicable to those who certainly are religious, but also not religious as well. Which is, if we're always fixated on ourself and how we think and how we feel and what we like and what we don't like, it gets, not only does it become exhausting for us, but we tend to just naturally behave more selfishly as a result. Whereas, or in opposition to that, in contrast to that, what you all are describing, something way, way, way bigger than both of you, that you both value. Mark, you mentioned that word values. I think it's really, really important. That you both value. Now that is what guides you, not just your selfish feelings and resulting behavior. Does that resonate with you all?
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And again, you nailed it in talking about it that way, that always getting better. I always say, because I'm a musician, I always say that, and I tell orchestras when I conduct them that music is always moving forward from point to point, never stagnant. And it's the same thing in our lives. So we should never just be willing to accept where we're at. We can always get better at something. We can always get better at ourselves, whether physically or mentally, read more, study more. And then in turn, it makes us better in our relationship because we have more to bring to the table and, to those around us as we, to give back and serve.
It's so
Exactly.
true.
I
Please go
think,
ahead, Mark.
yeah, about even like I mentioned, going through some hard times and there's things we pray for, and sometimes God's answer may be no. And
Mhm.
it can be easy for many to, when you go through something like that, to say, well, does prayer even work? Or
Mm.
God didn't answer this the way that I wanted to. So it just makes you question God, and but it's through those times that we have to realize that, like you said, He's much bigger than us, and He sees the big picture, the big plan, and we just have to trust Him through those things.
And having that as a central focal point in your relationship, I think it just, well, as we're discussing, it creates a totally different dynamic. I'm wondering if, just, this is kind of off the top of your head, if you could think of one or two examples specifically, practically in your day-to-day lives, maybe something that's happened even in the last few months, where that focus on God versus on just simply yourselves has changed the dynamic of a particular interaction. What you thought, what you said, how you responded to each other in a particular moment. Does anything come to mind?
Mm. I mean, most recently, I mean, as far as like maybe just a dynamic of job certainty. Like for me, last spring, I stepped down from a full time teaching position because they didn't want me traveling anymore, conducting. And I was like, I'm sorry, I'm going to keep my seat at the table as a female conductor, and that's not happening. And so we had went through a season of, and Mark was so supportive of that. He's like, this is what you're supposed to do. Whatever this looks like, we'll figure it out. And And that's been that way often through our lives. And so for over the period of the summer, we're like, okay, well, this is our new dynamic. We don't know what this is going to look like. And later on top of that, our dog Bella, who you heard barking, ended up having to have knee replacement surgery for both of her back knees. And so
Oh no.
unexpected when you don't have a job, and that layers stress on, but we just walk through it together just like we always do. And like, okay, well, there's a reason for this and we're just going to trust it. And then August 1st came along, and out of nowhere, we were coming back from Florida visiting his parents because we're there often because we love the beach and it's a free built-in vacation. I got a phone call from the school I'm working at now and asked me to come in and interview and hired me on the spot. So yeah. So it all works out. Sometimes you have to just take your seat at the table and do that lean in, even when there's uncertainty. And I know lots of people probably can relate to that in a variety of ways, but we did it together even when it was hard.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mark. Were you going to say something?
I was just going to say, yeah, I mean, it's easy during those situations just to, throw your arms up and say, I don't know why this is happening, and just, let that eat away from you. And, and that eventually can affect, our relationship together. Whereas if we say, well, I'm sure God's got a reason for this and we're just going to trust him and we'll work through these things.
And that shared set of values and perspective enables you to push through and to work through those challenging times.
Yeah, and that trickled down. So, some, you're like, okay, well, what does this look like? Are we going to eat out this week? Are we going to groceries? I mean, that's like the real, that's where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. And you figure out a ways. You become creative and you still make it work. I don't know. I maybe it's just my never give up attitude on things.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm curious, just to kind of go off script here. Sarah, you talked about how Mark was so supportive in that particular example, but generally, as I understand or know Mark, and Sarah, your personality as well in contrast. Sarah, you and I think share a more similar personality in that we're a bit more high energy, more driven, kind of A-types, if you will. And Mark, in contrast, again, as I know you, you have this kind of calm quiet about you, and the sense of steadiness about you. Sarah, what's it like? And this is all assumption, so y'all correct me if I'm wrong, but especially if, okay. So in that context, what is it like to be opposite of somebody who is that way? And the reason I ask this question, because I think it carries some significance in the context of relationships, especially maybe not necessarily from, the masculine feminine perspective, but just in general, whichever partner may be the so-called A-type and the other is a bit more laid back and low key. The significance of being able to be opposite of somebody who brings that sense of calm to particularly a high stress situation. What is it like to be in your shoes opposite of Mark, and how has that benefited the relationship?
I don't know. I mean, for me, yes, very much. That I'm very much like that, high energy, driven. I know what I want. And sadly, before people usually stop talking, I already know how to answer the question. I'm like, I remember early on, some of my conducting professors were like, Sarah, we get that you're smart. Just let us tell you what you need to do first.
Oh, wow.
Okay. It was just a learning curve for me, but I'm learning to really, truly listen.
I can relate to that.
Yeah. But I think we balance each other out, because there's times that, yes, he's quiet, calm, and supportive, and then the tables flip too, because there's times he gets overwhelmed sometimes with some of the bills and stuff that he's having to do for work or just projects and stuff, and so I can bring my stability to it. So we banter back and forth often, and shoulder those things. But yeah,
I think it kind of goes along with the opposites attract, and I think our personalities. I mean, they complement each other. Like Sarah said, they balance each other. Yeah, because if we were both type A personalities, I mean, that may cause some friction, right?
I can imagine. Yeah. Well, this is somewhat of a good segue into kind of the next point that you shared with me. And again, I'll read this just verbatim. Sure. Never go to bed angry. Life is too short, and often it really doesn't matter. And I said to you, I have mixed feelings on this idea, because I know that there can be pros and cons to taking this approach. For example, dealing with it head on right in the moment versus letting it go, maybe dealing with it the next day, or taking the time to work through it in the moment when we know maybe stress is somewhat high and that's going to affect the way that we're interacting with each other. So talk about what this looks like practically for you all, first of all, and then I want to kind of get into maybe the pros and cons of either approach.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about it last night and just kind of reviewing kind of what we were talking about tonight. And you know how when you get married, people give you all like these notes of advice, like you should do this. Well, it was actually his mom gave us the advice of never go to bed angry. And we kind of took that mantra on. But maybe some we talked about last night, you don't always have a resolution, but it's a
Mm,
choice to you to choose to enjoy the situation and find a way to find some common ground, even if you don't find a resolution. That may, like you're saying, you may need to take time just to figure out what that looks like. But is making the choice that I'm not going to stay angry about this,
yeah,
but because that's where you lose, because then it makes you, I don't know. For me, it eats at you.
for sure.
Well, maybe to agree to disagree, like, "We're gonna go sleep tonight, we don't have a resolution on this, but we're not gonna be upset and angry about it because we have different perspectives on it?" So I think that from that point that in the end, it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things,
Mm,
but, it could be a really big situation because everyone faces different things, but that's one of the things that we just have kinda even if you can't find a resolution, to still talk about it and agree to come back to it. But not to be angry to the point that you hate the other person kinda thing.
Exactly.
the emotional component of it. Yeah. Anything to add to that, Mark? Any thoughts on that?
No, I think she said it spot on. Yeah, I mean, you don't go to bed angry, so it just don't go to bed. And no, I'm just kidding. No, no, I'm just. But yeah, I mean, she said it spot on. Yeah, it's not worth. Yeah, I mean, going to bed mad at each other. I mean, I know I would have trouble going to sleep, and so yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you would say
Yeah.
it's not worth it.
Yeah.
We can like you said, agree to disagree and deal with it later. And that's what we've done. And yeah, usually the next day we would talk through it and work through it. And
Mhm.
yeah.
Sometimes having the space is good, and it's good for
Yeah.
everyone. Again, I tell my kids all the time, like as a teacher or like if our own kids, I'm like, you need to take time for a pause, or even personally, like
Mhm.
draw that circle around yourself. What am I so upset about? Is this an emotional reaction? Is it I am being selfish, or is this something that I really believe in and I want to see happen, but we need to figure out another way to do it. There's a lot of different ways to look at it. Again, it goes back to that human condition, what's really happening in that moment.
So a lot of it centers around not holding on to that negative emotion
Yeah.
going to bed. And what comes to mind here, and I'd love to get your all's take on this, but
Mhm.
it seems as though part of what might enable that is some baseline level of comfort or security in the relationship itself. I know that at least in years past, certainly when there was maybe not as much maturity as there is now, I there was this felt need to address the thing right this second. And
Mhm.
of course, there was all kinds of emotion tied to that as well. But had I maybe had the perspective of a sense of safety and security and the underlying relationship and look at this individual situation that, sure, in the moment may be high stress, or maybe it is even, like you were saying, Sarah, kind of a bigger deal in the scheme of things, but it's still just kind of a bump in the road, if you will, in the context of the relationship. The road's still there. We're still good. This comes up. Maybe we're frustrated right now, but we can still go to bed secure in the relationship and know that because of that security, we can come back to the conversation later on rather than feeling like we have to address this now or else something terrible is going to happen.
Yeah.
Does that resonate or what do you think?
I mean, sometimes the answer doesn't present itself right away.
Mm,
Maybe sometimes for me, sometimes if I haven't taken time for the pause or I haven't had time to really think clearly through a solution, sometimes for me, it's going out and having a run or just getting
mm,
some exercise or finding space to get a clear head because life comes at us 100 miles an hour. We're constantly bombarded by social media, everything else. And if you don't take time for the pause, it's going to affect your relationship and how you handle stressful situations, even like what we're talking about here. And so I think that, just choosing that we don't have a resolution, we still love and want to be together.
yeah.
We figure this out, right? But it's
Uh,
that the answer and the issue is not ultimately about our relationship. It's like we just got to find a way to make it work. It's like a teamwork kind of thing.
Yeah, I noticed the kind of chuckle there. We still love each other, but when I think back to a particular relationship that I was in the past that was very, very tumultuous,
Mm.
I didn't really have that security, whether it was a conscious thought or not, that, I know that this person still loves me. Nonetheless, it was a tumultuous relationship. So that sense of security didn't exist a lot of the time in the context of that conflict. And so I didn't feel like things were okay enough to be able to walk away naturally. Does that make sense? So I think
That's so
in some ways it should go without saying. It should be the default. We love each other. Things are going to be all right. We'll work through this at some point. But I think it's maybe important to highlight that, especially for those who've maybe struggled with in the context of the relationship, that they first establish that, or they strive at least to establish that baseline of security in the relationship that then enables them to face the occasional challenge as a bump in the road rather than, a massive pothole or something else.
Yeah.
I think that comes down to even our wedding day. Those last, 4 or 5 words that we said at our vows, till death do us part.
Hmm.
And yeah, I mean, I think that has to ring true in our marriage. Yeah. For that sense of security. Yeah.
I often, I mean, since you brought that up, I mean, it's a choice, we choose to lots of things in our life. And so even sometimes we have to choose the other person over what we want. And it's finding a place, a middle ground to agree. And so, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
But-
I mean, this whole show is built around that very idea, right? The idea of decision, the Latin root of the word, it suggests the idea of cutting off all alternatives. So I'm blinders on, I'm here, I'm in this, period.
Yeah.
And so now that I have that as my baseline, I can more comfortably work with, or address or deal with the occasional challenge, because the decision made, to your point, Mark, as well, ahead of time was I'm in this for the long haul. And so I'm working within that context to begin with. And that's back to what you all were both talking about earlier as well, which is that kind of baseline set of values that are kind of driving the relationship to begin with. That's super important.
And I think for us early on, that became very apparent that we had to figure out a way to work together through it.
Hmm.
Our oldest son, Micaiah, was born with a really rare disease. And, we didn't, up until that point, we had been married almost 5 years before we had children and hadn't really experienced anything too hard. We had, worked jobs, we're out of college, built our first house, and which is fun because we think so much alike. We built 3 houses together and had a blast doing it. But when our son was born, that really was a moment that we had to make some choices. Like, are we going to lean into God and trust Him even when it doesn't make sense? Because I had a normal pregnancy, there was no signs showing that there's going to be anything wrong. I mean, today he's perfectly healthy, except for underlying health things that he sees a doctor for at Vanderbilt that he takes medicine for. But at the time, that was huge. And I remember one of my older sisters saying that you have to make a choice. It's like your thing, deciding to love. Like I made a choice in my heart that no matter what this looks like walking forward, we're going to do it together, and I'm just going to lean into this. And that's just become ever since that moment, and as we walk forward in our marriage, that I just continue to make those choices even when it's hard and it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, Sarah will jokingly sometimes say, "Well, you're stuck with me." Yep, I am.
I do like to do that. Well, what are you gonna do?
Yep.
Well, and I want to use this as yet another segue to something that, again, I didn't send to you all in advance, but I'm curious to get your take on this because at some point, I think maybe it was in an email or something, but you alluded to the fact that you like to have fun. You guys like to have fun. And by the way, that's not just something that I read, but I've observed as well. I think it's a really great thing. And just kind of harkening back to what I was saying about my grandparents and their relationship, their very long marriage. My grandfather had the most amazing sense of humor, truly down to the very end before he passed away. And I think that really made a significant impact, not only on his individual health and what enabled him to live to 101, but also it really helped in the context of that relationship, because actually, in contrast to him, my grandmother wasn't always the most positive or upbeat person. But the energy that he brought to that relationship, that positive, upbeat, fun-loving energy, was so incredible. And I think it made a big impact in the relationship. So will you just kind of share, again, off the top of your head, how that idea of having fun has impacted your relationship? Maybe I'll start with you, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, and as I was just going to say, I mean, us having fun may look different than others. I mean,
Sure.
don't go skydiving or
You jumped when we were dating. I
Right,
would do it
that's
again.
true.
Heights are not my thing, but
That's true. And I still haven't got her out on the golf course with me. But
I
that's a
went one
different,
time. I'd rather be at the beach.
Uh,
He has his thing. I have my thing. So
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, we do, we like to go out on walks together and just talk and, things like that. I mean, I'm trying to think what other fun activities we would do
We go on dates, like, we love just being with our kids and doing stuff. Even though they're older, they're both in college now, but, we usually go to dinner once a week with everybody, or we'll go on a date,
Oh,
but
that's cool.
it's just being together. It's like it doesn't matter what it is. It's just that we're doing it.
Well, I mentioned earlier my grandfather's sense of humor, and actually, when I think about fun, I mean, certainly there are activities. You're absolutely right, Mark, that that's going to look different for different people.
Right.
But it seems that you all also have this sense of humor about both of you. I know, I mean, certainly Sarah, that's how you've come across, and even Mark. This may be a funny observation, but on some, or in some cases, in some instances, you have this kind of like small smirk on your face, almost like you just have like there's something about whatever it is that you're observing in the moment that you're finding amusing or entertaining. But I wonder if like there's I guess more specifically, not just the idea of having fun, but a sense of humor in the context of the relationship. Even in our conversation today, I see it between the two of you.
Oh yeah.
That really helps. If nothing else, it helps lighten the mood, right? Like if we're taking everything so seriously, ourselves in particular, but certainly the relationship as well. I think it can be a real, I mean, literal killjoy in that context.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, like we usually I know it's not really being mean making fun, but we'll make fun. Like he
Oh,
will
of course.
be like, "Oh, my back." I'm like, "Oh, there you go, you're getting old." I mean,
Yeah, a little trash talking is fun.
we
Oh,
totally do that, and we have a blast. Or like if we're having something to drink or whatever, we like to he has different tastes than I do.
Yeah,
And I give him a hard time about those things, but we'd have fun, well, no
that's
matter what
fun.
it is we're doing.
yeah, you have to laugh. Yeah. Laughter is the best medicine. Yeah.
And he often is the pun of the joke, just kind of laughing, just
Yes,
but they laugh at me too, because I'll do goofy stuff. So
I'm 3 years older than Sarah, and yeah,
yes,
I'm typically the humor for something related to my age.
At your age.
Yeah, so, yeah.
Well, you were talking about spending time together, and that's a great segue into kind of the last big idea that you shared. And again, I'll just read this verbatim, very short. It says, make time in your day and schedule for each other, or it won't happen. And I know this isn't a new idea. You hear this kind of thrown around quite a bit in culture, but there's, I have kind of, again, mixed opinions on it. At first, I think it really is important. But I'm curious why that wouldn't be, or what are your all's perspective on why that doesn't always come naturally, whether it's for you all or maybe for other couples as well, just your observation and life experience.
let me take it.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about it last night, and I think for us, like our schedules are absolutely nutty crazy. Like I teach all day long, and then I usually have a couple hours in home, prepping dinner or whatever, and then I'm off to evening rehearsals. I'm a conductor for several groups in Cleveland, and I often been traveling, flying out to be with orchestras to conduct. And I drag Mark along. He willingly comes along and plays.
Mhm.
He plays percussion, timpani, in the orchestras that I conduct, and so we stay busy. And so often that intentionality is doing dinner together, like a prep dinner so we can eat real quick before we leave. Or if we have time, we'll go on a walk. We love being outside to decompress from the day, not even necessarily anything that we have to talk about, just taking it all in and so those are the intentional moments, because otherwise we're like ships passing in the night and like,
Sure.
it was good to see you today. I'm going to bed. Sometimes that's the reality. Sometimes my day is so packed and he is maybe not on one of the things with me. And then I'm like, hi, I'm exhausted. And tomorrow will be more intentional, have more time together. So that's, just a snapshot of what that looks like for us. And maybe you want to lean in on that. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, and just like you said, yeah, I think it's being intentional, and of course, you have your routine, times that we're eating dinner together at home, or and we do, go out and walks together, but we have to be intentional to, yeah, try to make a time with just the two of us to, yeah, to either go out to dinner, to get away for a weekend, and yeah, I mean, and that may not happen, every 2 weeks. It may be, like, well, month or two before we have an
Yeah.
opportunity to do that. But yeah, you have to make it a point and be intentional to make that time
Yeah.
to yeah, and that to put that value in relationship in each other.
Well, and I love the idea that and maybe I'm reading into this again. Please push back or tell me otherwise. But Sarah, what you were describing about the fact that you would have a conversation such as, hey, I'm really tired tonight, but can we maybe catch up or spend some time together tomorrow? That level of awareness of the other person, and again, it should go without saying, but it doesn't always, unfortunately, in a lot of relationships. The awareness of the other person, the cognizance of the significance of spending time together for the sake of the relationship. You're acknowledging those things by even saying, taking 5-10 seconds to even say something like you described.
Yeah.
And I think that in and of itself, the other person hopefully at least is feels seen and heard, and it also gives the relationship even on a small level something to look forward to the next day or next week or whatever. And I think that really makes a big difference as well. But if somebody, I know that there might be pushback from some people. They're like, well, if you're scheduling it, whether it's a coffee date or, we're going to go away for a weekend, like you said, Mark, or even scheduling sex, that's a loaded topic in and of itself.
Right.
But the idea of something not just happening naturally to some people is off-putting because they're like, well, I just want it to happen naturally. The irony, of course, is this probably isn't happening in their relationship, but they want it to happen naturally. If it doesn't, then they're just going to kind of write it off. What would you say in response to that?
I don't know. I mean, most of the time, like if we get home, it's not always a scheduled walk. Like I'll be doing work and he'll get off, and I'm like, "Hey, want to go for a walk? Yeah, it's nice outside." Or it was pouring down rain. That's not happening, and we'll either fix dinner together or do something else. I mean, so there is a lot of spontaneity in those moments, or we'll go run errands together, do shopping, or whatever that may be. So it's not always scheduled, but I guess maybe the word schedule wouldn't be the best one to use, but being intentional,
Yeah,
deciding that's
love
going to
that.
be an important thing to do. That I choose you over an extra 30 minutes of playing on my phone. That I want to have a face to face conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd mentioned even like playing golf. Yeah, I mean, there's some times where, yeah, I want to try to cut out early and go play golf in the afternoon, or but there are times too when I need to spend the time with Sarah over golf. As sort of as hard as that might be, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I do have to be
Yeah.
intense about that and value our time together more than my time by myself.
But I'd also would say too, though, we like to find a balance. Like I said earlier, like I love to work out, and I have like we have our own hobbies, our own identities. And I think those are so important
Yes.
too. And again, I guess just having a commonality of like that you have this self awareness that what makes you tick. What like for me, I'm very type A, and I'm very much an extroverted introvert. So I have to have my downtime. Like I can only people for so long, and then I'm like, okay, I'm
Me too.
done. I'm done. And he wants like he wants to keep talking, and I'm just like, I'm done.
Mhm.
Just having the transparency and honesty. But
Yes.
that goes back to knowing yourself. I think the bottom line with so much of this is you draw that circle around yourself and you work on making you the best that you can be so that you can be the best you can be in a relationship.
Right.
And if you have a walk with Christ, then that comes and makes another layer of it. And even if you don't, those still can be applied to your life and your relationships, I think.
Beautifully summed up. But you know what? I want to throw one more question in here
Sure.
because
We're open.
this is kind of a funny, and again, I don't know, maybe in some ways like rhetorical, if you will, but all of this stuff is way easier when you like the other person,
Very true.
right? And again, it may seem obvious, it should go without saying, but one of the things that I know personally, it's something I've kind of struggled with, even in the context of a relationship or relationships I've been in. When I think about this so-called quote unquote work, I'm doing air quotes for people that can't see me. This work that we have to do, we do need to be intentional. We do have to be okay with the idea that we have to put some effort into the relationship to make it really great. But I can't help but think that it's way easier when we actually like the other person and we like seeing the other person happy and we want a good relationship. What is it that makes you, after 30 plus years together, still like each other? Like, does it feel like it just comes naturally? Is there something in particular that drives that?
I don't know. It feels like it comes natural. I don't ever have to think about it, but
That's cool.
I don't know. I just keep coming back to that same statement though, that, you have to know who you are.
Hmm.
You cannot find your joy in someone else. You can't find your happiness in someone else because that puts a stress and a pressure on someone that's not fair. That if you are a stable person and you have worked on or are working on your issues, then you're open to be able to have a healthy relationship. I think that that's a really important thing, wherever that and whatever that looks like in people's lives.
Yeah,
That, please go ahead, Mark.
I was just going to say, yeah, I think a lot of it too is your spouse and knowing their desires, their wants, and I was even there's a verse in the Bible that talks about putting others before yourself, and I think that definitely includes your spouse. And so many people in today's society, I mean, it's all about me and I and my rights
So true.
and but it's I think to make a marriage work, you definitely have to put your spouse's desires and wants over yours, and that's the only way it's going to work together.
But it's interesting, Mark, that you bring that up because what I've noticed, unfortunately, in a lot of relationships is that even something as simple as like, what do I give this person as a gift on their birthday or for
Mhm.
Christmas? It requires a list. Like, will you give me this list? Tell me what you want. My point being ultimately that I mean, you were talking about knowing your partner. Unfortunately, it seems like a lot of relationships, romantic relationships, the partners don't make the effort to know each other. They lack awareness of the other person's interests, desires, needs, or otherwise. And that naturally complicates the relationship, unnecessarily so, I think.
Yeah, I think we lack as a society wanting to go and ask the hard questions and be in depth in any relationship, whether it's with our friends. And I always love the statement that truth never fears a challenge.
Yes.
To be honest with yourself and then be honest with each other. And, like you're saying, a list, it kind of made me laugh a little bit because we've had this conversations and I'm just like, he knows that I like jewelry or I like to just go gift cards and I like to go shopping and I'm happy with that. And he loves to do his sports and golf and, we're okay with that. I'm like, I don't have to have it's the again, deciding that it's okay, that it's not like the Hallmark channel.
Sure.
Uh,
Yeah, absolutely.
Society, we are bombarded with what those expectations are, and that makes it difficult too. But I think finding that depth in relationship is important to really know each other beyond just the physicality and the surface level stuff. Have those conversations, talk, and like Mark said, share the important things, like what matters to you, because that should matter to the other person. And if that's not meshing, then that's going to make all the things hard.
Before we close, I want to highlight something. I'm going to go back to something you said earlier, Sarah, about liking each other
Yeah.
and the importance of self-development.
Mm.
And it hit me as you were talking, something I think that's kind of cool, which is that, and maybe other people have realized this, and this is kind of a new concept to me, but it's so easy for us to quote, not like the other person or behave in such a way that doesn't seem to indicate that we actually like or love this person when we don't like ourselves.
Abs-
And if there is internal turmoil or psychological issues or spiritual issues or otherwise
mm.
that we haven't addressed, then it's going to be way harder for us to like anybody, certainly the person on the other side of us in that relationship.
Yeah, you project that on others. Whatever your situation is, if you haven't dealt with it, that becomes what you project on others, sadly. And so you do have to fix yourself before you can be really fulfilled in a relationship, whether it's with your spouse, your kids, or your friends. Nobody can fulfill that for you. And for me, from my perspective, God's the one that fulfills those holes that no one can fill. But ultimately, you do have to, work on yourself.
Well, this has been really good. I mean, I'm just thinking about like all the nuggets that you guys have shared. I really appreciate the, first of all, you making time to do the show, especially here early stages of the show when it's a new thing and you weren't quite sure what you were getting into. But thank you also for just being willing to be transparent and share with our listeners. I mean, the end goal of this show is value add for couples out there who care to actually, again, not just be in a relationship, exist in a relationship for the long run, but actually create intentionally, to use your word from earlier, intentionally create a relationship that they actually can have fun in, that they enjoy, where they want to be with each other.
Yeah, I think it'd be such a travesty to go through life and not have someone to have fun with. I'm like, I've said to him before, I'm like, I don't know if anything ever happened to you. I mean, I'm such the personality, the type that I'd be like, fine, I'll just be by myself because I'm like, I just don't, I mean, how am I going to find somebody to be like that? And I'm just, but it's pretty special when you find someone that you mesh with like that. So.
That's amazing. Well, congratulations and props to both of you. I mean, 30 plus years, and you obviously have plenty of wisdom to share. Thank you for sharing that with all of us. For those of you listening in, if you haven't visited the website yet, you can go to decidingtolove.com. If this is your first time watching or listening to the show, make sure to subscribe. Thanks again, Mark and Sarah. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And we enjoyed being with you. It takes us way back from when we used to, I think we had all met at about the same time growing up. So yeah, it's really cool.
It's good to connect again.
Yeah.
Thanks everybody for listening in.